Yes. Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning to some of you here watching us on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. I'm your host, Sandy Yannone, and it's our first reading of the month of November. And on our first Sundays, we always start with a poet's focus. Today's focus is on the word lineage. And before we talk a little bit more about that, I want to give a very beautiful shout out to one of the poets who's with us today that we'll be hearing from, Karen Poppy, who was really the inspiration for today's reading. I was at a reading about a month ago, and Karen offered of their own accord these poems that beautifully rendered the lineage of their work. And I thought, this would make a very good entire program with multiple voices to hear the lineages of our members. Of course, that's only one way to interpret lineage. It does not have to be a poetic lineage. That is part of your Poet's Focus reading if you're one of our 12 featured readers. And it will get to as many people as we can on the open mic waiting list. I want to thank Don Krieger, Kim Ports Parsons for their support of the program. And thank you for the heart. I appreciate that, of course. And before I talk a little bit more about Poet's Focus on Lineage, I'd like to invite a special guest of mine to make an announcement on the program. It's my very good friend, Allison Arth, joining us from Seattle, Washington, who is the curator, wizard, so many words I could say of the podcast Little Oracles. So nice to see you today.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much. And thank you. And hello, everybody. I just have a quick little announcement. Again, as Sandy said, my name is Allison Arth, and I host a podcast called Little Oracles. It's about creative theory and thought and creative practice and process. And I'm here today for a very exciting reason. It's to share a project that Sandy and I have been working on together. And it's really a celebration of and a direct manifestation of the lines and the lineages that inform who we are as poets and artists and makers. And it's debuting on my podcast, Little Oracles, starting next week. So it's a mini series called Little Oracles Divinations, and it's a collaborative epistolary style conversation in poems that Sandy and I have been engaging in over the last couple of months, actually. So over the course of 7 short little episodes, we'll be sharing new work in progress, which is very exciting. And we'll be unpacking those poems that we'll be sharing, and we'll be talking about how a poem gets made and the value of collaboration between and among creatives, and the vitality and the necessity and the egalitarian nature of poetry as an art form. And it's just a lot of really rich explorations of what it means to express oneself and to engage in the act of making and writing poems. So I hope you will all join us to hear even more of Sandy's brilliance and wisdom and some new work too by her and by me. So the season trailer, it'll drop this Tuesday, November 7th. So you can listen to that on November 7th. Maybe we'll give a little sneak preview to the Cultivating Voices community. So watch the Facebook page for that. We can talk offline about that, but you'll definitely be able to listen to the trailer on the 7th. The first episode drops Thursday, November 9th, and we'll have weekly episodes every Tuesday thereafter through mid-December. And you can find and subscribe to Little Oracles on any podcast platform. So you can go on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Google Podcasts, any podcatcher, any podcast app of your choice. You can find Little Oracles, but you can also listen on the website at littleoracles.com. So again, I hope you'll tune in and dive into these divinations alongside us. Thank you again for your time today. Thanks, Sandy, for giving me this little platform to share with this wonderful and amazing community. I'm so excited to hear what everyone's going to share today. And Sandy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Allison. And I do have to say, it really dovetails well with the program today in terms of lineages. We spoke quite vociferously about our lineages while we were engaging in the collaboration and on the conversations that we had about our poems in progress. And so it seems just so fitting that today would be the day that we would be able to announce this new series. Again, I do not understand all that podcast language that you just mentioned, Allison. And also, if you want to drop anything in the chat about where folks can catch Little Oracles, I do hope, folks, you'll have the time and or the inclination to listen in, not only to the episodes that I'm on, but the previous episodes are phenomenal. There are also poetry prompts called divinations, which is where we gleaned some of our work from. Well, let's turn to our lineages of this week and to our folks here live on the open mic. I wanted to just mention that, you know, we are certainly living in very shadowy times. It's very deeply challenging, whether one is in the epicenter of a conflict or whether we are living within the ripples of that conflict, because everything does ripple out. Folks that are attracted to our program, I experience you all as extremely thoughtful people. And that means that those ripples do extend they cast a very wide net. Having said that, all the more reason why us calling in as many of our voices of strength and resilience from across time and space is appropriate, and I hope of a certain balm and support to all of you here in the room today, and of course those of you who may be watching us on Facebook and or who are watching us on our recording platforms. Well, let's get to it. I'm very excited to welcome first up today our dear friend Anne Gleeson, joining us from New Zealand, who will be followed by Deanna D'Arc.
Thanks, Sandy. I'm actually calling in from Australia, not New Zealand, which is sort of like Canada, USA, but that's okay. My poems about lineage today, the first one, they both stem from my mother, but one goes back on her father's side, the other on her mother's. And the first poem is called Her Father's Arm. The writer stood by his pile of unopened books, ready for a different conversation. Who could blame him after 5 years of research and writing and carrying the weight of the stories of 10 men? A story of kinship and connection, slipping and sliding between the chaos and brutality of France. Snug now between these striking covers. But the 80-year-old woman is determined that one error be righted. Who would notice this minor detail? Who would care? What did it matter that the arm of one of the soldiers was amputated above the elbow rather than below, as this writer had recorded? It would matter to a child whose father was too often sick, who sometimes fell and always struggled, but whose delight it was to scoop his daughter into the crook of his strong left arm and place her on his knee, the two of them rocking and chattering she secure in the link of left arm to right stump, asking again for the story of his lost arm. My own genetic lineage is 96% Irish. And one of the stories that absolutely moved me so much was the story of Mary Robinson, lighting the light for the diaspora. So all of those with our Irish heritage or part thereof were being remembered in Ireland. And I just thought it was such a moving, beautiful gesture. I wrote this poem. Shining a light from Ireland. When the president lit a lamp in her window for the diaspora, I wanted to tell her to find a way to show what that meant. Mostly, though, I wondered what she was wearing as the lamp leapt to life. Was she cozy in her nightie or still suited up? I pictured her too as a girl watching her mother Tessa light the Christmas candelabra for the travellers in this world and in the other. When you told me you'd lit a candle for us, I pictured you striking a match. I could smell sulphur as flames sparked, feel warmth as it strengthened in the shelter of your cupped palm. I saw you carrying a taper, putting it to the wick of a pure white candle, its light gleaming in the circle of your faces. Emigrant tourism and Ancestry.com might feast from the famine, and Irish descendants navigate the globe like shorebirds. But now that loss weighs in, I don't want euphemisms or cliches. Let the lamp burning for the emigrant children shine a light for my mother, Kathleen Mary, daughter of Margaret Mary, daughter of Mary Kane, who learnt to walk on the boat.
That's absolutely beautiful way to begin our Poets Focus today on lineage. That's Anne Gleeson, everyone. My mom's clapping in the background for you. She's one of your biggest fans. Well, folks, I want to remind you all before we go to our next reader, please use the chat generously to share your comments as the readers are coming on and sharing their work. It's a very active chat in our work here. Our friends on Zoom also have the opportunity to be chatting with us. And also to our readers, if you have content in your poems that you feel would warrant a content notice to allow for folks to make a decision about whether they might want to mute. We do appreciate you having some mindfulness around that aspect. You don't need to give content notices for everything. What a reasonable person would expect might be something that would require a notice. So thank you very much. Well, I'm very excited to be able to hear today from Deanna Dark. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Sandy. I worked with Sandy at Evergreen before I went down all the way to Long Beach. So instead of reading a long poem today, I decided I'd read 4 shorter ones. I'll start with a poem titled Narcissa. My great-grandmother's vanity, heavy with mere and inherited femininity, it sat in my mother's room, and when we were kids, we would sit at the edge of the mirror and play with her makeup, one time spilling her nail polish. A mauve stain still sits on the surface. Punished, we never played with makeup again. Then one day it was mine, and now it sits in my home with my makeup within. And I will sit there alone at the edge of the mirror, crying at all my beauty, crying over that mauve stain, trying not to ruin my mascara, hoping I don't fall into my reflection and become a flower by the lake. This next poem is a really short one. I think. It's called I Was a Child. In my house, when I was growing up, we had a rule. You don't hit girls. I wish the rule had been, you don't hit children. This poem is more about the lineage that I share with the history of trans folks and non-binary folks. It's called We Have Always Been Here. As they marched Joan to the stake, they said her sins the flames would take, for she would not recant her ways, her armor used to fuel the blaze. 1900s Germany had gender-affirming surgery, yet Nazis rejected Hirschfeld's claims, his books and research put to flames. Try to erase us with your fire. Burn us, we will rise up higher. Try to make us disappear, despite your pyres we persevere. From Akkadian priest and Elagabalus to Jorgensen and Johnson with her Stonewall riots, we claim proud and loud and without fear, we have always been and always will be here. And my final one for you all, again, kind of trans-related, but I think it also follows in the idea of lineage of poets. It kind of has a quoting of William Blake's Tiger, Tiger, that what a mortal hand or eye may craft thy fearful symmetries. It's called Transmutations, the title of my book. There is alchemy inside of me as I search for the answers to the riddles of life and death. My alembics and ampules have broken hearts, and my own 100 times, boiling them down and distilling the vapors, searching for the answers to how they work. Maybe if I slow down this reaction, maybe if I speed up this one, will the outcomes be different? In my own body, I push together disparate halves. The divine in me is melted down, cast into ingots, reforged again and again in the fires, turned into a blade, a kettle, a gate, a ladder. Whichever shape I give it, I try again to answer the questions that remain deep within. Is it possible to turn lead into gold? I know it must be, for pieces of me shine bright with forgotten lusters, a philosopher's stone made in the crucibles of healing. The furnace of my body is a forge for brief infinities. What immortal hand or eye dare craft my fearful symmetries? Did they who made the fascist make thee? Thank you so much. And you can find my work at dianadark.com.
That's Deanna Dark. Transmutations. I love the book, of course, as you know. I have a signed copy, indeed. So good to see you. Thank you for being with us. Perfect for Lineage today. Fantastic. Well, our next reader, Kim was saying, what a reading we're going to have today. And absolutely true. Our next poet is David Brydges, and David will be followed by Martina McGowan. Hi, David.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, everyone. This poem is a commentary on a TV program that was on in Canada over a week ago. I'm not sure how much international exposure it had, so I'm going to give a little background to this poem. It was about folk singer Buffy St. Marie and her Indigenous ancestry claim. It's caused quite a bit of shock and surprise in Canada for sure. She's a very well-loved person, but appropriation is quite a serious problem in Canada. University presidents have resigned, university professors, novelists who claim to be something other. So I think this is appropriate because this is November is Native American Heritage Month. The Fifth Estate versus Buffy's estate. An artist's responsibility is to purify the source. Francois Mauriac. It was a blockbuster story questioning songwriter, musician, social justice warrior, icon Buffy Sainte-Marie's Indigenous identity. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's flagship investigative program, The Fifth Estate, reported compelling evidence of contradictory claims. A false narrative was created around her birth. Massachusetts birth certificate, marriage certificate, and census information, along with testimony from her nephew, all point to being born to a Caucasian family in America. Her apparent parents were sent a letter from Buffy's lawyers telling them to cease going to the media that she was born to them. Indigenous experts on the program confirmed several discrepancies. Buffy was invited to respond to questions and rebuke versions of events. She declined, posting a video and letter on Facebook, a dubious messenger media with mixed credibility. She deemed the story hurtful. It hurt dividing faithful followers, who is confronted with her stupendous legacy in the Native American community being discredited as a potential pretend Indian. I have more questions and want more answers. I've not firmed myself to condemn or exonerate. Please give us open skeptics a more vigorous defense. I saw her twice at an outdoor music festival on Vancouver Island and in my hometown theater. Afterward, in the lobby, Buffy beamed, and we beamed, to be in the presence of a gifted legend singing her traditional people stories. A local poet and his Indigenous wife presented her with a handcrafted teardrop dulcimer. Today, Buffy's beam has dimmed. Sweet tune memories. Doubts, an acid bath dissolves what was. Rift and rip, break and breach, the unscarred are scarred. The old knife of truth cuts the story flesh of a flawed hero. She's a titanic trailblazer whose ship of legitimacy leaks but is not sunk. History's bloodline bleeds the first casualty of any cancel culture war, the whole truth and its mutilated versions. A friend emailed a scientific solution. Lying in wait and not lying is a DNA test. Stripping our emotional loyalism, pointless finger pointing, unfreezing the polar positions. Let the blood speak its ancestral line of truth.
Again, there's David Brydges. Thank you so much, David. And today's Poets Focus on Lineage, as they would say on Rattle, you know, right, poetry right from the news. There it is. Thank you for again this prismatic perspective, using our word today of lineage. That's David Brydges. Folks, next we'll hear from Martina McGowan, followed by Karen Poppy.
Thanks, Sandy. I have two pieces. The first is a cento, and I'll put up whose poems they are at the end. A litany of fear and loss, a cento. The art of losing isn't hard to master for those of us who cannot indulge memory of old tombs. Looking inward and outward, remembering love will vanish. Anger rots the oak and elm, roses are rare, so it is better to speak this illusion of some safety to be found. Our words will not be heard above the din and dam. The night is full of lost keys, the hours spent badly. Standing upon the constant edges of decision, I am accused of tending to the past, remembering faces, names, and dates. History, seeking a now that can breed the passing dreams of choice futures. Today, I am a Black woman in America. Lines across my face as if I sculpted it, of buggers and bastards, no moon or stars. Veins collapse, opening like the lips of our understanding. Moving toward our word countries. So many things seem filled with the intent. I will ask the angels of a creative God to lessen the blows because I love to live beyond the face of fear. The art of losing isn't hard to master. We were never meant to survive. Actually, stick those in the chat. And I have another one, which I've read here before. Sankofa, who we're from. Plucked from starlight, playing in forests, passing through the gates of hell and barracoon, excuse me. 13 days inside the belly of another beast. Highland heather lashed to our DNA. Up from sticky, sweet sap of stout pines, barbed and prickly cotton, 200 pounds a day. Flesh, timber, fluffy bowls, all on the auction block. Tumbled down slave quarters turned to homes. From emancipated slaves bearing biblical names, grandmothers dreaming of freedom with a capital F. Cotton-scarred hands corralling the future, sharing history not found in books. We are from red clay pounded into concrete, hard streets and harder women, doling out wisdom and hard-earned lessons. Love buried deep like diamonds, hard to see, sometimes harder to feel. From running across hot, tarry rooftops, wise potato chips and orange knee-highs, marbles, stickball, and flying free from swings before we knew we were prey. Again, tiny apartments filled with family, aromas of foods from down home, a blessed circle big enough for Jesus wept to be said more than once, smiling eyes cutting, side rolling, waiting for another to say he sure did, risking a finger pluck from one aunt and the death stare from another. Fathers who adored us but drank too much, crushed beneath the world's weight. Brothers who loved too many, others molesting those they could not love. Women standing against the evil tide. From people who learned beating as remedy and correction, pushing their children's hearts away, hoping to save them from corruption, from death. Rising, continuing to imagine worlds better than we received. This is a song woven through many generations, holding one long breath. Sharing the story so that others can see that hope thrives inside our pain, and that home lives inside our hearts. Thank you.
That is Martina McGowan, new book coming out this spring. We're looking forward to having you on the new book showcase coming up. Thank you. You know, again, glad you brought Accento because it's a perfect form to highlight direct lineage and pay homage to those very, very iconic or not so iconic lines of poets that have influenced us. Oh, it's beautiful. It was just, that was masterful poem. Thank you. Thank you. And the reason I got up was I was looking for my Sankofa scarf that I have. I wanted to show folks the Sankofa bird, but it wasn't accessible to me. I always have the specter of where something used to be in my old house, and yeah. So thank you so much, Martina McGowan, everyone. Well, Karen Poppy is joining us next, followed by Billy Brown. Thank you, Karen. I hope that you are feeling quite grand about what you've inspired here today so far.
This is making me so happy, Sandy, and I wanted to apologize for me going off screen, but my dog, whose name is Kitty, as you know, was insisting on playing. And so in that way, she is a part of the lineage, because play is very important in poetry too, as serious as it can be sometimes. I think she wants us all to know that play is important. And I know in every poem I write, her paw is right on my heart while I'm doing it. So she's a part of the lineage for sure. So all cheers to Kitty. I'll start with my poem from my first full-length collection, which the book is titled Diving at the Lip of the Water. I'm trying to get it into view, but I'll put it in the chat later. And this poem's titled Badass Mermaid. The lineage is Sylvia Plath, and then I'll read from a poem of Oliver Wendell Holmes that I learned of after I wrote this poem, because that's sometimes how lineage works. Badass Mermaid. It is no night to drown in. Lorelei by Sylvia Plath. Blood whirls within, whirl of ear, ocean sound. You profound and underdeep, hobgoblin, hobbling there before I sleep. I in your realm, a siren, not yet, but sobbing. You moving murk, darkness, spies lurk. In winter, I tumbled there accidentally. I sang within the sea, fathomed I had privacy. Your ears, they bled with my song. Homer's Odysseus told it wrong, or his men told it innocent. Their ears wax sealed against all sound. I, innocent too, innocently fell asleep, dry ice packed in snow that does not freeze, leagues and leagues deep, countless. Before that or after, oh my soul, I don't remember and probably pointless. I used your shampoo, smiled and combed my hair. Your rage silvered and glinted on your teeth and eye. No matter, soon, back home. Spring, somehow, I didn't care. I slept until I woke. Chrysalis cracked on seafloor. I, a mermaid with wings. Lorelei, butterfly, a terrible glistening. Beauty can be frightening. I did not know myself, knowing all I could know. My mind, a mantle ripped off like a sheet at night, became great, one vast I. Then I could write like a seer, everything and everywhere, a messenger. I do not drown, badass mermaid. I breathe water, I breathe air, I derange. Pitched roofs, pitched reefs, I say your name, write your nightmare. Dive back under, scaled with your fear. My tail smacks down, flash lightning, ear-rending thunder. Irritated clam creates the pearl in turn creates me. Then I create, write, surrender, open a universe, land, and sea. Thank you. So the poem I'll read by Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., who was the father of Oliver Wendell Holmes, the Supreme Court Justice. So Sr. was a writer and poet. He wrote a poem in this little book. I'm sorry I can't get it quite right, but the book is called Autocrat at the Breakfast Table. And I picked it up in Virginia, which is another one of my legacies, lineage type things. So this is from the Chambered Nautilus. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read part of it. Thanks for the heavenly message brought by thee, child of the wandering sea. Cast from her lap, forlorn, from thy dead lips, a clearer note is born. than ever trident blew from wreathed horn, while on mine ear it rings. Through the deep caves of thought, I hear a voice that sings. Build thee more stately mansions, O my soul, as the swift seasons roll. Leave thy low vaulted past, let each new temple nobler than the last. Shut thee from heaven with a dome more vast, till thou at length art free, leaving thine outgrown shell by life's unresting sea. Thank you. And if anyone wants reading on their own, I recommend A Noiseless Patient Spider by Walt Whitman, which is part of this lineage as well, with the line, "Oh, my soul."
Oh, thank you so much. That's Karen Poppy, everyone. Really the inspiration for today's program of Lineage. And again, I love the example that you gave to demonstrate what I experienced that first time that inspired the reading today. And Karen's new collection, Diving at the Lip of the Edge of the Water. Very good. Next, now we hear from Billy Brown, followed by Don Krieger.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for this wonderful poetry reading. I always enjoy being with you all. It's fun to hear poems from a ways back with words like thine and thou and art and so on. I love that level of English, although I don't write in it. My poem is entitled Lineages, and I address 3 lineages of mine. 1, family. I am named after my father's father, William E. Brown, whose middle name is the name of the highest mountain in Colorado. No, not Everest, Elbert, which competed with Pikes Peak for decades through various measurements, eventually winning the honor. My grandfather, William Elbert Brown, traveled from Michigan to Colorado to attend Colorado School of Mines in Golden, until he discovered upon arriving he could not afford the out-of-state tuition, so he went to work in the gold mines. Once working an entire week to obtain gold-flexed quartz pieces, turning them into beautiful gold-set cufflinks, which I now possess and will eventually pass along to my son, Alexander William Brown, which he will not pass along to his son, since so far he has only daughters, Nevada James Sharp and Dusty Rainbow Sharp, who just might appreciate having gold-flecked quartz. Thus, my father's Brown lineage dies with me and with Alex, since my brothers also had no sons, although my grandfather's lineage continues with my uncles Barker's and Don's descendants. 2, academic. And I think I'm going to truncate this just out of courtesy. Academic. My PhD in mathematical logic is from Dartmouth College, 1972. Dissertation, infinitary languages, generalized quantifiers, and generalized products. My academic father, PhD advisor, was Stephen Garland, PhD in mathematical logic from UC Berkeley. Dissertation, second order cardinal characterizability, whose academic father was John West Addison Jr., PhD in mathematical logic from University of Wisconsin, 1955, dissertation on some points of the theory of recursive functions, and so on. And at one point, Alonzo Church, PhD in mathematics from Princeton University, dissertation alternatives to Zermelo's assumption. Another of whose PhD students was John G. Kemeny, one of my PhD committee members, and was eventually president of Dartmouth College, whose academic father was Oswald Veblen, PhD in mathematics from University of Chicago, where my daughter, Elizabeth Ann Brown, had a full academic scholarship. Veblen's dissertation, A System of Axioms for Geometry. I had no PhD students of my own. There are thousands of mathematics and statistics students with whom I hope have been instructed by my teaching. Third, poetic. I began writing poetry shortly after my daughter, Beth Brown, died in a car crash. Read my early poetry at Central Avenue readings in Albuquerque, hosted by Dale Harris. Took a poetry workshop course from Patrick Houlihan at Central New Mexico Community College. Began hosting fixed and free poetry readings in August 2008. Published Fixed and Free Poetry Anthology 2011, 2015, 2018, and 2021. Have now published Fixed and Free Quarterly, March, June, September, and December of 2022 and 2023. I have encouraged hundreds of poets to read more than 3,000 times at more than 150 readings and encouraged them to be published. If I have another minute, I would like to read something else.
Go ahead. It's short, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a poem from the aforementioned Dale Harris, a recent publication of Dale Harris, who ran the Central Avenue poetry readings at which I often read. Her new book is called City Ditches. She lives in Albuquerque. And I think it's apropos. My grandfathers, greats and great-great-grands, they worked the land, save one. He farmed the sea, hunted whales and seals, patient men with sun-browned necks and hands, in album pictures, standing stiff, wearing Sunday starched white shirts. The sailor came ashore in time, lived long, called the railroad schedules out for trains at Boston Station, just another port of sorts. The farmers shared their crops, saw the farms get auctioned off, left to take odd jobs in town. I worked the city, sail a desk, plant rows on rows of numbers, words, watch them grow. I harvest, reap, copy, paste, delete on computer screens. No farm, no sea. Behind my house, I have a garden plot, tomatoes, herbs, some flowers in a pot. Sometimes, lost in their care, I feel a stir. Perhaps the grandfathers, perhaps they're here. Thank you.
That is Billy Brown. Oh my gosh. The numbers that you just threw out, like 3,000 people, like, like a number of pages when I think of it in Fixed and Free, in the quarterly and the anthology. Oh my gosh, that is quite a lineage. That is quite a lineage. Thank you so much.
Some of them are duplicates. Many
That
people
doesn't-
read many times.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That's all good. That's all good. Thank you so much. Billy Brown joining us from Albuquerque. Again, what a hub of poetry there in ABQ. Next, we will hear from Don Krieger, followed by Joanne James. Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Sandy, and thanks everyone. I'm proud to read today. These pieces are about the lineage of nations, and I have an epigraph for you. Our dead are different from yours. That frightens me. My dear friend, if we had sat together in a Berlin cafe on that black election day in 1932, sharing our art, laughing and learning, I know you would have spoken for evil, though the beast and his brown shirts were weaker then than ours are now. Would you still have spoken so in 33 when their mad master, so like ours, triumphed, or weeks later when their capital burned, or the next day when their Patriot Act passed, or the next month when their Manzanar opened? What say you now, so like then, just weeks since our president's darlings, the uncolored beasts, swarmed our Reichstag? Which of us will pick up your tab this time, and what will it be? When is the end of friendship? Will you speak for the monsters still, tender yet again your gaslighting caress to all of us who love you? That's my dear friend. Lament for those held hostage tonight. Tonight Israel lives, sworn to defiance and blood, in fear for her children, shackled by fanatics or dead. Gaza waits breathless the hell strike to come. Her creatures hide in her ruins, surrounded by innocents. How many would kill me if they knew me? How many would I murder if I could? Which of us is clean? I judge myself without mercy. Yet the brutal cycle we cherish in God's image is beggared by his cruel glory. I am a Jew without hope or faith, yet I can still pray and do. One more time this night, may your death angel pass me by. Leave me whole, your chosen, terrorized, and waiting for tomorrow's horrors. If you truly exist and hear, then hear this. You are a beast and unfit. So too your zealots, whatever their name for themselves or you. If I held your might, Almighty God, in that instant I would erase you and your memory from all that is. If you truly exist and care, open the earth and destroy me. For though I claim nothing over Moses, your darling, I claim goodness over you. Surely we would be better off without you. But who, if not you, can stop the madness? Who even wants to? Surely not Israel, whose privilege stands on her armed might and her God-given destiny. Surely not the dispossessed Palestine, whose only strength is destruction. Surely not their Arab kin, whose only gifts are weapons, forged for an ancient feud. And surely not America, we who thirst for oil, we whose nuclear bullets hold the world hostage, like those Israeli hostages shackled in Gaza tonight, like those Gaza innocents beggared by Israel's might.
Thank you. That is Don Krieger, everyone. I'm grateful for the lineage that you brought to the program, although I'm not grateful that the lineages exist. Thank you for courage of those poems, as always. Next, we'll hear from Joanne James, followed by Ken Burch.
Hello. Boy, I feel like I need a moment after Don's poem.
You can absolutely take a moment.
It was perfect. It was perfect to hear today. I was thinking of two different ways to do this. I was going to read from Kenneth Patchen at a time in my life when I turned 30 and I lost everything in an earthquake. I had 4 autoimmune illnesses, cancer, and TB. And I thought and I couldn't be a nurse anymore. So Karen gave me these book of Kenneth Patchen's poems, and I just sat in bed and typed. 2 days I typed poems. And after the 3rd day, I said, you know, I could do this. That's when I became a poet. But after hearing some things that Martina read, the Cento, and with Don, I wanted to read this poem about my family lineage. And it's called I Hold the Darkness Dear, where all my loved ones travel. I bring them peaches and warm blankets. Dad, this soup is river water. I hold the darkness dear and think, what have I done in this lifetime to find the prayers I could inhabit? I'm a dark river, an envelope misdelivered, a frail whale in uneasy seas where my loved ones travel beyond reach. Visiting in dreams, speaking Gaelic, speaking Hebrew. My Ukrainian great-grandmother Sophie, shot on the railroad tracks by Stalin soldiers, yelled, I won't die in Siberia. She was 92. My other great-grandmother, Sophie Schultz, died in Auschwitz when she was 80. My Jewish great-grandfather, Joseph, in Nastisov, Ukraine, killed on a train. And I became obsessed with trains, never knowing these histories, but in time they came to me. My whole life changed with apparitions of owls. They are the comedies of ancestors dissolving my fears, leading me to the stars above this valley on the edge of midnight. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne James. Perfect following to Don Krieger. I know sometimes it's difficult to follow the thing that we have heard. And you did very well, my friend. Thank you for your contribution to the program today. It's our poets' focus on lineage, and true to this program's platform, it has been a prismatic interpretation of the work. We have 4 poets left on our featured readers today. That'll be Ken, Mona, Michael, and Jennifaire. Before we head to our waiting list, and we'll get in as many folks as we can before the 90 minutes of the program. So next we'll hear from Ken Burch.
Hello, it's good to be here. It's very moving to be in the presence of all of these poems that are being read. I need to note that this first poem, I don't know if this is exactly a trigger, but it's addressing in part the fact that some of my ancestors were were enslavers. And there, I believe, maybe people listening to this who were enslaved, and the writing of this in part is a means of trying to begin addressing that, of owning it. And I want to note that. So that's the first one. It's about my ancestor. It starts with a reference to my ancestor, Daniel McPherson, who was a member of the Jacobite Rising in 1715 in Scotland and ended up being deported to the New World as a result of that. And the direction some of his descendants took after that. You were a Jacobite, Daniel, a rebel against the tyranny of the English, of the arrogance of the crown, the corruption of the former Scottish Parliament, those Robert Burns would later call a parcel of rogues in a nation who took bribes and promises of hereditary peerages in a place called London to vote the body they were elected to out of its Edinburgh existence and their country into servitude. As one of the first colonies of the British Empire, what would be called the Raj when it took India, later called worse and deserved things, when it took much of Africa, much of Asia, much of the Caribbean, and what would be called America later. Though Che Guevara, a name you could not know, would later say other places were also America, Nuestra America, our America. In any case, you stormed Preston, a town just past the English border, ended up in a cell, then on a ship on an ocean to a land called Maryland, one of the places they transferred the Catholics to. Having fought to avoid chains, Daniel, could you know? Could you guess? Could you stomach the thought your descendants would buy and clap chains on others? This, thank you. This last one is a poem of kind of the lineage place of being raised in the Pacific Northwest and of the effects that climate can have on the way you see life, and what seemed to have happened and what it didn't always succeed in having happened. Left to me was a place of perpetual hanging rain clouds, bringing unceasing liquid humbling, within shadows that never quite vanished. Those who brought me to be were of and beneath those clouds, droplets of Calvineer, pioneer, minimization of possibility, of self shadows, of limitation, of what one might seek, what one might wish. And yet, any rainfall, with or without intent, waters something, makes some soil fertile. In the end, what was thought, if thought by anyone or anything, to stunt the garden, somehow fed its unexpected bloom. Thank you. I'd like to say one thing to one other poet. I don't know if you knew this, Marina, but this is in reference to your poem about the Sankofas. The mascot at the Tacoma campus of Evergreen State College is not the Gooey Ducks, which is the campus, the mascot at Olympia, but the Sankofas. And they have the Sankofa bird painted all over the building that it's its campus. I thought I should pass that on this day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ken. Yeah, in fact, that's what I was trying to get, was my scarf that we wear on the graduation, that where we process all through the neighborhoods in Tacoma when I was a faculty member. So that's what I was looking for, to show my Sankofa bird on my scarf. So, but thanks for sharing that, Ken, as well. Well, again, we're doing so well here today on our poetic, ancestral, national, like the prismatic way that our poets focus today on lineage is unfolding. And even in some of the structures of the poems themselves, I'm thinking of the cento, Martina's cento, as a way to highlight and elevate lineage. Well, next we hear from Mona Zamfirescu, followed by Michael La Bombarda. Mona, so great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I apologize for being off camera today. It's that kind of a day.
Not a
only-
worry at all. Not a worry at all. We're glad you're
Oh.
here.
Okay, I have only one poem today. I love to bake, so it might seem like this is not on topic, but it is, I promise. Why I Bake. The poem is called Why I Bake. I do not recall the exact moment I knew I have to bake as if my life depends on it. The first time I saw an alchemy of perfect proportions, poems in a slice of bread. The first time I realized ancestors are speaking flour and water, how sourdough gathers their kindness out of thin air. The first time I heard them and felt they still knew how to pray. Their voice intertwined with mine, whispering words that could easily pass unnoticed, unheeded. Slow down, or more, or less. Enough, enough. I do remember the weight, the clouds of flour, the slant light beams on my kneading hands, the stretched and folded sticky dough coalescing slowly, built elastic with love. The hours and hours of rising, and how one day I learned to stand tall in the heat. The countless times I thought nothing will come of it. And how one day I knew that even nothing at all is also something, and how we long for that moment. Please break this bread with me and feel it reaching you like light, the far distant galaxies of your body. A morsel of this is enough. Slow down and breathe with me. A morsel is enough. Enough. Thank you all.
Lona, I just want you to know my mom sitting behind me saying, wow, wow. And inside I'm saying, wow, wow. And if that poem isn't published, contact me. I have some suggestions for where a place that I think would be very, very honored to have that poem. That's Mona Zamfirescu, everyone, with an absolute perfect poem that fits in beautifully with our theme today of
Thank you
Lineage.
so much, Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, our final two featured poets before we head to the waiting list for the open mic. Our penultimate poet is Michael Bombarda. And Michael very generously put in the chat. This poem was from his new book. So welcome, Michael. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. The first poem I'll read is called The Fresh Gust of Wind. Reading the posthumously published book by Jack Kerouac, The Book of Sketches, I came upon this line, but I'm an evil old man and world hater who will become the greatest writer who ever lived. And I'm struck by this braggadocio, and partly through his exuberance and self-touting, I've indulged myself with the same thought from time to time, even though I'm only kidding when I say it. Who blames him or me for this boastful indiscretion, since there is a natural high in imagining yourself beyond your limits? But here I restrain myself and say, tread humbly and lightly, keep balance, and maybe you'll be remembered like a fresh gust of wind in the sometimes sultry rooms of the academics who have learned to love Kerouac and now all have in-house MFAs to foster and create the new Rilkers, Joyces, Kafkas, and Whitmans. Or perhaps you'll be like lesser-known poets in cafes, galleries, bookstore readings, online readings, who farsightedly dream of being local legends in a downtown world. But poetry is what matters, on golden or silver tongues to make the banal marvelous and the previously unremembered or unnoticed memorable and unforgettable in a legible text that you can borrow or preferably buy to help support your ever broke poet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Michael, did you say you had 2 poems?
Yes, I have one more.
Oh, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Sorry.
All right. Just call soliloquy. At 15, I wanted to be a poet. I listened to Bob Dylan, and while reading some of his liner notes, I came across the name of the poet Arthur Rimbaud. In the song Desolation Row, Dylan mentions Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot. I read about these poets and wanted to emulate them. I always wanted to be on stage and recite my words. Could it be that instead of being a poet, I've always wanted to be an actor, a playwright? No, Shakespeare is the poet I've aspired to as an adult, though falling far short of him. If only I could be Keats, I console myself. Thank you.
Wouldn't we all, if only we were Keats, wouldn't we all be able to console ourselves? Indeed. That's Michael and Bombarda. Thank you so much. Today, it's our Poets Focus on Lineage, and our final poet in our Poets Focus today is Jennifaire K, and then we will head to our very patient poets on our waiting list. Welcome, Jennifaire. And I'll just, yeah, I think so. Yeah, we have, yeah. You just need to unmute. There you go.
Thank you for the welcome. I was wondering, this is Jennifaire. I was wondering if you could tell me where the recording is kept or shared with.
They're on Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. I guess I'll just briefly introduce that I am a direct descendant of Sir Walter Scott. My great-grandmother and I share the same first name. And her last name being Scott. I am published, but this is not published. It's just loosely called A Little Daydreaming, A Little Detoxing, A Little Exercising My Life. I drove away having had 2 hit and runs in that parking lot in a matter of 1 week. The second, today, with me in the car, watching it happen, hearing and feeling it. I drove away thinking about its relationship within the context of the rest of the story, the recount in the context of my life story. How does it fit? Atypical at all in this aberrant time period. My mind quickly went to speaking to those gone onward before me, a thought which passes through more often than I'm aware of. And as I drove the quaint street I selected, homes, domiciles, and familial spirit, it spoke again, full of life stories, memories of my dad, memories of his, untold to me, nonfiction, history. a dialogue in which I am informing. An ignorant comment about my existence feels like a spin-off born of the hate speech drilled into me by parking lot demon witch. I am reminded my dad is fluent in 3 languages, degreed in history and in poli-sci, and lived through the Mau Mau War with the British colonial empire. Our history, the culture, traditions, was lost because of them. He was going to tell me the stories, and I never got to because I never got the chance. I'll put a period there. Thanks for including me.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Let's again want to welcome folks who do call in on the program. Great to have your poem as part of today's Lineage Poets Focus. Very grateful for your presence. Well, we now move on to our waiting list. And I, of course, do not have my waiting list in front of me. So I'm going to ask Kim Force Parsons to assist me for a moment and guide me to where are we headed to next, Kim?
Got it in the chat.
Okay, let's see. Let's see if I've
One
got
poem each, everyone on the waiting list, and we are at about 12 after 4, so we'll see how we can go. First up,
Okay.
Charlene Neely, followed by Lynda Crawford.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. All right, Charlene Neely, you are up first for the wait list. And you'll need to unmute.
Charlene, you need to unmute. We haven't heard anything.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you. There you go.
I
Welcome.
have terrible time with computers. I looked at Lineage the way it has all the kinks and detours in it when you start, and came up with this. It all started in Ireland because John, the son of Alice Ford and Rob Roy, the famed Scottish highwayman, met and married an Irish lass named Abigail. Because John and Abigail made their way to America, Pennsylvania, that is, where they had 9 children. Because Grimes George, their 6th child, was 7 when Ezekiel, their 9th, came along. Because Grimes married Cassidy. And because Ezekiel married a girl named Mary Ann. Because Grimes' granddaughter fell in love with Ezekiel's son, and they became the parents of my grandmother Eva, who fell in love with Frederick just as World War I broke out. And my father was born shortly after. Excuse me. And my father was born shortly after. Was brewing when my father, Wayne, went on a blind date with a lovely young girl from Wymore because they became my parents, making Grimes my 3rd great-grandfather, while his brother Ezekiel is my 2nd great-grandfather, on the other side of my genealogy chart. And that is how John and Abigail became my third and my fourth great grandparents, depending on which side of the family you stand. Thank you.
Charlene Neely, everyone. You know what I love about that work is that many of us in this room could use that very same prompt and create their own lineage poem, just as you have. So thank you for providing that wonderful example of a poem that a number of us could find ways to work through and or work against in terms of however our lineage is in terms of familial lineage. That's Charlene Neely, everyone. Well, next we have Lynda V E Crawford, and looking forward to hearing your interpretation today.
Thank you so much, and I am hoping you can hear me. Can you? Or
oh, I can hear your voice exceptionally well, and I love it.
Thank you so much, because my Zoom on my laptop crashed, and I frantically came in on my phone because it's not letting me in on laptop. So, okay, and my phone is preset for no video, so I don't want to tamper with it now. What I've done, and I actually started to work on this poem in early September, before I learned of your theme. And this poem was really about thoughts on the severing of knowledge of lineage. And I was in a Phyllis Wheatley, Jupiter Hammond mode, writing some thoughts related to them. And as a result, I wrote this sort of reflecting based on Phyllis Wheatley. She had a name. When I was 7 or 8, I knew my name. Even before then, when my tender knees bounced with the music of my island, my chattel-style home where I was born, I knew my name. I had a mother, a father, generations of ancestors. The African girl had a name. Generations of names before she was snatched, transatlantic, from a 1700 Senegambia world into a Wheatley world. The cursed ship Phyllis that oceaned her became her name, and a young girl with a history, carrying all that came before. A history was erased. Could no one ask her her name? She was Christianed into the political power of English words, scribed at 15. 'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, yet her quill knew. Remember, Christians, Negroes black as Cain may be refined and join the angelic train. Was there enough left of her inherent self to enfold, keep safe her own family's name? Could she remember her original name? Thank you.
That's Lynda V E Crawford. I like to share a little bit with you when my mom says things. She's like, that's a wow. That's a big wow.
I appreciate it. You know I love your mom. So.
I do too.
Yeah, we're Connecticut folk, you and
That's
I,
it.
you know,
That's
but
it.
it's not my original home. So
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Oh.
Appreciate you.
There's a lineage there, of course. Again, we are here on our Poets Focus today. Our focus is on lineage. We've just heard from Lynda V E Crawford, and we've been hearing a very prismatic program today with so many interpretations of that word lineage. I believe we have 10 minutes left to the program. I'm next up on the list, so let me go very quickly with my one poem. I could go on and on about lineage, and we heard Elizabeth Bishop today. There's so Audre Lorde. There's so many poets that I really love to pay homage to. But as I was thinking today with Don Krieger, there was a poet that was really influential to me, Richard Hugo, who actually was from Montana, Seattle area, and a book called 31 Letters and 13 Dreams. And I wanted to share this poem in particular because of its connection to how Hugo realized his connection to another poet in his lineage from years before he wrote this poem. And it's called Letter to Simic, and the Simic is the poet Charles Simic. Letter to Simic from Boulder. This is Richard Hugo. Dear Charles, and so we meet once in San Francisco, and I learn I bombed you long ago in Belgrade when you were 5. I remember we were after a bridge on the Danube, hoping to cut the German armies off as they fled north from Greece. We missed. Not unusual, considering I was one of the bombardiers. I couldn't hit my ass if I sat on the Norden or rode a bomb down singing the Star-Spangled Banner. I remember Belgrade opened like a rose when we came in, not much flack. I didn't know about the daily hangings, the 80,000 Slavs who dangled from German ropes in the city, lessons to the rest. I was interested mainly in staying alive. That moment the plane jumped free from the weight of bombs and we went home. What did you speak then? Serb, I suppose. And what did your mind do with the terrible howl of bombs? What is Serb for fear? It must be the same as in English. One long primitive wail of dying children, one child fixed forever in dead stare. I don't apologize for the war or what I was. I was willingly confused by the times. I think I even believed in heroics, for others, not for me. I believed the necessity of that suffering world, hoping it would learn not to do it again. But I was young. The world never learns. History has a way of making the past palatable, the dead a dream. Dear Charles, I'm glad you avoided the bombs, that you live with us now and write poems. I must tell you, though, I felt funny that day in San Francisco. I kept saying to myself, he was on the ground that day, the sky eerie mustard and our engines roaring everything out of the way. And the world comes clean in moments like that for survivors. The world comes clean as clouds in summer, the pure puffed white, soft birds careening in and out, our lives with a chance to drift on slow over the world, our bomb bays empty, the target forgotten, the enemy ignored. Nice to meet you finally, after all the mindless hate. Next time, if you want to be sure you survive, sit on the bridge I'm trying to hit and wave. I'm coming in on course but nervous, and my crosshairs flutter. Wherever you are on Earth, you are safe. I'm aiming, but my bombs are candy, and I've lost the lead plane. Your friend, Dick. That's Richard Hugo from his book, 31 Letters and 13 Dreams. Thanks, everybody. And now, Yeva Johnson. Welcome, Yeva.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I'm just going to say very quickly, I originally wrote this poem for Cultivating Voices Live. I happen to be working on it today. It speaks to other things, and there are poets missing. I apologize because their books are available in the San Francisco Public Library. So I'll just read it because it's a little long, but here we go. And it has an epigraph with modified gratitude chantos. It takes a village to support an emerging Black poet. When asked to pick a favorite Black poet, I chose two, Audre Lorde and Pat Parker. Then I thought, what about Lucille Clifton, Gwendolyn Brooks, James Baldwin, or June Jordan, or so many before and since? These greats had passed on, but so many still live today, illuminating a Black poet's path. Picture the village I see filled with Black poets, women poets, Asian poets, older poets, queer poets, Muslim poets, brown poets, lesbian poets, Jewish poets, eco poets, Latine poets, indigenous poets, disabled poets, youth poets, transgender poets, musician poets, non-binary poets, Buddhist poets, artist poets, feminist poets, and even more poets, an infinite village. Come, meet some poets of African descent who reside in my poetry library. Alan Peliotz Lopez, Amanda Gorman, Amanda Gunn, Amber Flora Thomas, Arissa White, Artress Bethany White, Avacha, Ayodele Nzinga, Brittany Black Rose Capri, Camille T. Dungy, Carl Phillips, Cheryl Boyce Taylor, Claudia Rankin, Dennis Smith, Daniel B. Summerhill, Dazier Grego Sykes, Douglas Kearney, Eve L. Ewing, Evie Shockley. To love and mourn in the age of displacement means this Black queer whole and a contingent of Black faggotry. Yes, each a citizen. Look it up in the Book of Buck Studies. And remember, I never told you about things I didn't do with this body. Don't call us dead, because even without a knife or a semi-automatic, we fierce poets use our tongues to navigate the red channel in the rupture. Then the war makes us realize with every step I take towards peace, we'll all have a chance to get free. Mama Fife represents, recounts our stories in verse as we ignite this trophic cascade. So at last, when we arrive at the hill we climb beyond electric arches, we find the Sorrowland Oracle, divine, 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 who grasps the Black pearl of my Africa. Grisel Yolanda Acosta, James Cagney, Jericho Brown, Jewel Gomez, John Murillo, Joyce E. Young, Keith Donnell Jr., Mahogany L. Brown, Major Jackson, Marilyn Nelson, Mason J., M.K. Chavez, Morgan Parker. We made the move to discover poetry, contemporary American poetry, and you know we had to roll deep in still water. We may never be able to explain the tradition or how it happens, but it's not just the crossbones on my life over a chlorine sky that become necessary things to pack on the way to everywhere. Watch our metamorphosis. Watch this magical Negro dance like black steel magnolias in the hour of chaos theory. Nizila Jameson, Norm Maddox, Pamela Sneed, Patricia Smith, Raina J. Leon, Rita Dove, Robin Cost-Lewis, Terrence Hayes, Thea Matthews, Tarita McKell, Tyemba Jess, Vernon Keeve III, Vivi Francis. A profeta without refuge gathers American sonnets for my past and future assassin to unearth the flowers on the voyage of the sable Venus. This funeral diva uses her evolutionary heart to transform collected poems using Black calculus to create incendiary art for the shared world. Her Southern migrant mixtape, listen again and again to this olio she calls Synchronicity, the Oracle of Sun Medicine. Thank you.
That is Yeva Johnson. My mother right behind me says amazing. And of course I echo amazing indeed. There's no better way for us to end the program today than I think on your poem. We're at the 90 minutes, my friends. I know there's a few people left on the waiting list. I thank you all for today's amazing, 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 amazing Poets Focus on Lineage. Those of you that we weren't able to hear your important voices today, please come back in 2 weeks for our wild card open mic. We'd love to hear your work and your voice. Today, folks, we heard from, at the top of the hour, Anne Gleeson, Diana Dark, David Brydges, Martina McGowan, Karen Poppy, Billy Brown, Don Krieger, Joanne James, Ken Burch, Mona Zamfirescu, Michael La Bombarda, Jennifaire K, Charlene Neely, Lynda V E Crawford, yours truly, and Yeva Johnson. Folks, would you please, for all the poets that we invoked today, not just the voices that we heard, but the voices of those that we heard from through the voices of today's poets, would you please unmute and show your appreciation for this most prismatic program of poetry?
Beautiful, beautiful, everyone.
Wonderful.
Well done. Well done,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Wow.
instrument.
you.
Great stuff.
Infinite
Great.
family.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, one and all, again, for being with us today. Again, it's our Poets Focus, always our first reading of the month. And we're coming up to the end of the year. Our final reading will, first reading in December. We'll have another Poets Focus. And this is a reminder, folks, next week, please do join us. We have an exquisite lineup for our new book showcase. Our 3 confirmed poets be joining us from Ireland will be Eamon Linsky and Brita Spite, both of them from Ireland, and Ryler Dunstan will be joining us from the Pacific Northwest, and we may have that 4th reader to be determined. That's our new Poets Focus next week here. And then, of course, join us for our 3rd and our final reading of the month of December, November 19th. It'll be our always illustrious wild card open mic. You are all the features. You determine what the content is. I really appreciate everyone being with us today. And I want to just give a special shout out if you are around this week. I know Mike Jerkovic is in the audience or had been in the audience. The CAPS reading series is up this week. And on November 9th, there'll be a very special reading. Mary Oishi was kind enough to put this in the chat, but there's a reading to kind of honor Mary's service to during her poet laureateship in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That'll be November 9th of an anthology of the New Mexico poets that was her one of the many projects, but deemed a signature project of her laureateship, and she's being honored through Fixed and Free, Billy Brown's program. That'll be November 9th. And of course, join us again next week. It has been an incredible pleasure to be with you today, and a true honor. Your voices were powerful. They were just mindful of all of the ways that we live as humans on this earth, and call forth and call before and call forward and call together all of our humanity. Thank you so much for being with my mom and I here today. I'm your host, Sandy Yannone, for Cultivating Voices, live poetry. And as I say at the end of every program, please take very good care of yourselves this week. Take exquisite care of your beloveds and keep writing your remarkable poems. Put yourself right in the lineage, right in the center of the lineage. We'll see you next time. Thanks again for being here today. Be well.